Welcome along. We're part of the Urban Herald team, and today we're doing an in-depth analysis, really digging into something vibrant and honestly pretty complex. Pride flags.
That's right. We're basically working from our own comprehensive guide here at the Urban Herald. The aim is to really unpack the meaning, the history, and the way these symbols have changed over time.
Yeah, our goal with this analysis isn't just to look at pretty colors. It's to understand what these flags actually stand for. Powerful symbols of identity, community, and, importantly, advocacy within the LGBTQIA plus movement.
hmm And our guide really drives home how rich this whole visual language is. I mean, you go from that very first rainbow flag right up to the newest inclusive designs, and well, each one tells a story, a really vital one.
So we're going to cover the basics, the foundational flags, then look at symbols for more specific identities. We'll also talk about why just seeing these flags matters so much and what being a good ally looks like in this context.
It's quite a lot to cover, but it's all grounded in the detail from our guide. Maybe just take a second before we dive in. What do you think of when you see a pride flag? What comes to mind? Let's unpack what our guide says these symbols are really communicating.
Okay, let's get into it. So our guide starts at square one, explaining that pride flags, well, they're not just flags, they're tools created by the community for the community. They signal things like belonging, safe spaces.
Exactly. And the guide points out how vital they are for expressing identity and building that sense of community. It's not just decoration, it's about visibility, representation, solidarity, and even preserving history. They mark decades of struggle and progress.
And our guide traces the very beginning back to a specific moment, 1978. Harvey Milk, the groundbreaking, openly gay politician, he asked an artist and activist, Gilbert Baker, to come up with a symbol.
Yeah, a unifying symbol for the gay community. And Baker's idea, according to the guide, was the rainbow. He apparently saw it as this natural flag from the sky, something inherently diverse and hopeful.
His first version debuted at the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade, June '78, and it had 8 colors, not the 6 we usually see now.
8, yeah. And Baker gave each one a meaning. Let me see if I remember from the guide. Hot pink was sex, red was life, orange for healing, yellow sunlight, green nature, turquoise was magic or art, indigo for serenity, and violet was spirit.
It's kind of amazing thinking that was the start of this huge global visual language.
But as the guide explains, that 8-color version didn't stick around for long. Practical issues meant it evolved pretty quickly by 1979 into the 6-color flag we mostly recognize today.
Right, practicality.
Yeah.
That's interesting how real life shapes symbols. The guide mentions the hot pink fabric was just hard to find commercially, like to make lots of flags.
Mm-hmm. And then later, the turquoise stripe got dropped. Apparently, it was to make it symmetrical, an even number of stripes. Looked better hanging vertically on street lamps for parades, that kind of thing.
So we ended up with the 6 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And the meaning sort of consolidated a bit, but the core ideas stayed. Life, healing, sunlight, nature, serenity, spirit.
Yeah, and our guide really emphasizes that this 6-color flag is still incredibly widely used. It functions as this kind of foundational symbol for the whole LGBTQ plus community. But things definitely kept evolving.
Oh, for sure. And the guide walks through this evolution really well, showing how the symbols expanded. They started reflecting a broader awareness of different identities, especially groups who felt maybe overlooked.
A really key moment the guide highlights is the Philadelphia Pride flag in 2017.
Right. Created by Philadelphia's Office of LGBT Affairs, they added black and brown stripes right at the top above the rainbow.
And the guide explains this was very intentional. It was a direct response to criticism that mainstream LGBTQ plus symbols and maybe even some community spaces hadn't adequately represented queer people of color.
It's a strong visual statement, isn't it? Acknowledging that, yeah, racism can exist even within LGBTQ plus communities, and that true equality has to actively include everyone, especially people of color.
Definitely. And the guide notes it got a big visibility boost when Lena Waithe wore it to the Met Gala in 2018. That brought it to a huge audience.
So building on that momentum towards inclusion, we get the Progress Pride flag in 2018. This one was designed by Daniel Quasar, a non-binary artist.
Yeah.
Our guide really analyzes how this design is all about, well, progress.
Yeah, Quasar kept the standard rainbow, but added the chevron shape, like an arrow on the left side pointing right. And that chevron incorporates the colors from the transgender flag, pink, light blue, white, plus the black and brown stripes from the Philly flag for people of color.
And the guide breaks down what that chevron means. The arrow pointing right, obviously that suggests forward movement, progress.
Right, but putting it on the hoist edge, like where the flag attaches to the pole, The guide says that's meant to signify that there's still a lot of work ahead. We're not there yet.
Mhm. And the black stripe in that chevron has a dual meaning, the guide points out. It also stands for people living with HIVs and remembers those lost to the epidemic. That's a really crucial part of the community's history.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing issue that, as the guide notes, needed that specific acknowledgement within the main symbol.
So the guide points out this Progress Pride flag has become really popular. It signals a commitment to a more comprehensive inclusion, really making trans folks and people of color visible within the broader community symbol.
And the push for even more inclusivity didn't stop there. Our guide details how, just in 2021, Valentino Vecchieri from Intersex Equality Rights UK redesigned the Progress flag again, this time to explicitly include the intersex community.
How do they do that?
They incorporated elements of the intersex flag right into that chevron, specifically a yellow triangle with a purple circle inside it.
Okay, and the colors, yellow and purple.
Yeah, the guide explains those were chosen for the original intersex flag because they're colors that historically aren't tied to the gender binary, pink and blue.
Gotcha. And the circle.
The unbroken purple circle, the guide says, represents wholeness, completeness, and the right to bodily autonomy for intersex people. So adding that into the Progress flag chevron aims to make it a truly comprehensive symbol for the entire LGBTQIA plus spectrum.
So what's really fascinating here, reading through our guide, is seeing how these core symbols have actively changed. They've responded to feedback, to a growing understanding within the community, becoming more layered, more deliberately inclusive, addressing critiques, recognizing groups that maybe weren't centered before.
Exactly. But the guide also makes it clear that alongside this evolving main symbol, there's a whole range of flags for specific identities within that broader community.
Right. Because while the rainbow works as an umbrella, these specific flags give focused visibility. The guide explains they help communities that might feel overlooked or misunderstood connect and find recognition.
Yeah, definitely. Let's touch on a few key ones our guide details, maybe starting with flags related to sexual orientation.
Okay. Our guide covers the bisexual flag, Michael Page, 1998. It's got the 3 stripes, magenta on top, royal blue on the bottom, and that wider purple stripe in the middle. What's the main takeaway about that purple stripe, according to the guide?
Well, the guide really stresses that purple is key. It represents the blend, how bisexual people can be attracted to same and different genders existing within both gay and straight communities, but having their own distinct identity.
Right.
And a crucial point the guide makes is that this flag helps push back against the old binary idea that bisexuality is only about men and women. That purple blend represents attraction potentially beyond just 2 genders, including non-binary people.
Good point. Then there's the pansexual flag, 2010 Jasper V. That's magenta, yellow, and cyan stripes.
Yeah, the guide explains those colors are often read as attraction to women, magenta, non-binary people, yellow, and men, cyan, or sometimes more broadly, just attraction regardless of gender.
So the key difference from bisexuality, as the guide sees it.
Well, there's overlap, definitely. But the guide suggests many pansexual people use this flag and term to specifically emphasize attraction to all genders, or where gender just isn't really a factor in attraction. It helps distinguish that specific experience.
Okay, moving on to the asexual flag, chosen by the avian community, 2010. 4 stripes, black, gray, white, purple. What's the core message here, based on the guide?
The guide frames this one as really important for showing a spectrum and fighting misconceptions. Black is asexuality itself, gray is the gray-ass semi-sexual part of the spectrum, white represents non-asexual partners and allies, and purple is for community.
So the key insight is?
It shows asexuality isn't just one thing, it's a range. And importantly, the flag includes allies and community, which directly counters harmful myths like asexual people can't have relationships or that it's some kind of medical condition.
Right. And the guide also singles out the aromantic flag, Cameron Whimsy, 2014. 5 stripes, dark green, light green, white, gray, black.
Yeah, the greens represent aromanticism, kind of the opposite of red, which is often linked to romance. White is for platonic or aesthetic attraction, and gray-black cover the spectrum of sexualities within the era community.
So the big distinction the guide highlights.
It's that romantic and sexual orientation aren't always the same thing. The guide clarifies that many aromantic people do experience sexual attraction, just not romantic attraction. This flag gives visibility to that specific experience.
Okay, let's shift to gender identity flags.
Oh.
Our guide covers these too. The transgender pride flag is probably one of the most recognized after the rainbow. Monica Helms, 1999, light blue, pink, white, pink, light blue stripes What's special about its design?
The guide points out the deliberate symbolism, light blue and pink, the traditional baby colors for boys and girls. The white stripe represents those transitioning, people who are intersex or identify outside the binary, like non-binary folks.
And Helms designed it so it looks right no matter which way you fly it, right?
Exactly. The guide explains that symmetry symbolizes finding correctness in one's own life. So the key insights here are visibility for trans identity, obviously, but also countering those big misconceptions like thinking gender identity is the same as sexual orientation or that you have to medically transition to be trans.
Then there's the non-binary flag, Kai Rowan, 2014, specifically for people outside the male-female binary. Yellow, white, purple, black stripes.
The guide explains those colors. Yellow for gender outside the binary, white for people with multiple genders, purple for those feeling a mix of male and female, and black for people with no gender or agender folks.
And the most important point from the guide here.
It's really about showing the diversity within non-binary experiences. It's not just one thing, and the flag helps make that visible. It also kind of visually counters the idea that non-binary identities are some new trend. The guide reminds us many cultures have recognized genders beyond male and female for ages.
Our guide also mentions the genderqueer flag, Marilyn Roxy, 2011, uses lavender, white, and chartreuse green.
Yeah, the guide notes this one came a bit earlier than the non-binary flag. It deliberately uses colors to represent androgyny lavender, blending pink and blue, a gender identity or neutrality with white, and then identities outside the binary with that chartreuse green. It's about creating new associations, moving away from traditional gender colors.
Okay, so we've covered quite a few specific identity flags. The guide then moves into flags for specific communities or movements within the broader LGBTQIA+ context, like the intersex flag, Morgan Carpenter, 2013, yellow background, purple circle.
Right, and as we touched on with the progress flag update, the guide explains yellow and purple were chosen specifically because they don't have those historical links to binary gender, and that unbroken circle stands for wholeness, completeness, potential, and crucially, bodily autonomy.
So the key insight, the guide says, is how this flag pushes back against treating natural intersex variations as medical problems that need fixing. It's an assertion of rights.
Precisely. Then there's the commonly used lesbian pride flag, Emily Grunn's 2018 design. 7 stripes, shades from dark orange down to dark pink.
And the guide breaks down those colors.
Yeah, it details meanings like gender nonconformity, independence, community, connection to womanhood, serenity, love and sex, and femininity. The guide points out this flag replaced some older versions that had problematic associations, and it aims to celebrate the diversity within the lesbian community.
Okay. And there's also a flag specifically for gay men,
Okay.
right? From 2019, green to blue gradient with a white stripe.
That's the one. The guide explains the gradient represents community, healing, and joy, and the white stripe is there to explicitly include gender nonconforming, non-binary, and trans gay men.
So the purpose was specific visibility for gay men, separate from the general rainbow, but still inclusive.
Exactly. The guide notes it faced a bit of brief online controversy initially, but those claims were apparently debunked. It provides that distinct symbol.
And lastly, the guide mentions the straight ally flag, black and white stripes with a rainbow A.
Yeah. The guide explains the black and white stripes represent heterosexuality and cisgender identity, the absence of the rainbow colors. And the rainbow A stands for allyship or activism. The goal is to signal support safe spaces.
But the guide also notes some debate around it.
Right. Some argue it kind of centers straight cisgender experiences in a movement that's not about them. The crucial point the guide makes, though, is that real effective allyship is about action. Educating yourself, advocating for rights, amplifying LGBTQ+ voices much more than just displaying a symbol.
Wow. Okay, that's an incredible range of symbols, each unpacked in our guide with its own story. And understanding them really pushes us beyond just the cloth itself, doesn't it? Into the wider context, the impact.
Absolutely. The guide really emphasizes how critical visibility is. Just seeing these flags can be hugely important for individuals who are maybe looking for acceptance, for connection.
And the guide mentions research showing a real impact on mental health, right? Especially for young people.
Definitely. Seeing these flags in places like schools or doctors' offices or workplaces, it sends a signal. It can signal safety, potential acceptance, that you might belong there.
There's an educational role, too, the guide points out. These flags, just by being visible, introduce the wider public to different identities. They can challenge stereotypes, maybe build a bit of empathy.
And for LGBTQ plus individuals themselves, seeing your identity reflected publicly, the guide suggests that's powerful affirmation. It can really reduce feelings of being alone or invisible.
Which leads to how we engage with these symbols respectfully, and what allyship really means in practice, something else our guide discusses.
Right. It stresses that understanding needs to go deeper than just thinking they're decorations or, part of a trend. Real allyship, according to our source, involves educating yourself, actively supporting rights, lifting up marginalized voices within the community.
So displaying a flag, the guide suggests, should come with a sense of humility, recognizing the struggles they represent.
Yeah, exactly. Treat them with respect. Don't just alter designs casually. And crucially, if a flag is displayed, especially by an organization, it should ideally be backed up by genuine, inclusive policies and behavior.
That's the rainbow washing issue the guide mentions, right? When companies slap a rainbow on something in June but don't actually support their LGBTQ plus employees or the community year-round.
Precisely. It creates expectations and then lets people down, which can actually cause harm. The guide is clear. These symbols belong to the communities they represent. Allies should really defer to community members on how they're used and avoid co-opting them just for profit without giving back.
The guide also looks at where we see these flags. Obviously, pride parades and festivals are the most visible examples, creating these amazing temporary communities.
Yeah, but increasingly we see them in more permanent institutional settings. Community centers, healthcare clinics, schools, libraries. And the guide notes that in these places, the flag can signify actual policy-level support. It can create safer spaces. There's even research suggesting better health outcomes when queer folks feel safe and seen in healthcare.
And online spaces, too, the guide highlights those as really important. Somewhere people can express themselves safely, if maybe displaying a flag physically isn't an option. Plus, it helps build global connections.
Ultimately, the guide frames these flags as conversation starters. They're entry points for talking about inclusion, equality, social justice. Seeing one should ideally make us think about, well, what are the actual policies here? What are the attitudes?
Because true inclusion, as the guide reminds us, takes ongoing work. It's policy changes, education, commitment. It's not just about the symbol.
Right. Educational institutions have a role in normalizing them, teaching respect. Workplaces, too, it can boost morale, help recruitment, but it has to be backed by inclusive policies and benefits.
Our guide also tackles some common misunderstandings head on, like the idea that there are just too many flags now.
Yeah, the guide basically argues that misses the point. Each flag represents a specific community needing its own distinct visibility. It's not about overload, it's about nuance.
Or the idea that the classic rainbow flag covers everyone, so why need others?
And the guide counters that while the rainbow is a great umbrella, these specific flags are crucial for groups like trans people, intersex people, people of color, whose unique experiences and struggles might get lost under the general banner. They need that focused recognition.
And pushing back on the idea that new flags are unnecessary or just trendy.
The guide positions flag creation as a reflection of the community's own growing understanding of itself. It's about self-definition, claiming space, and representing diversity accurately as awareness evolves. It's part of the journey.
So we've really covered a lot of ground here, drawing from our Urban Herald analysis, from Baker's first rainbow and how it changed for practical reasons.
Through those really vital additions, acknowledging people of color, trans individuals, intersex people, making the main symbol more inclusive.
And then diving into that whole tapestry of flags for specific sexual orientations, gender identities, and communities.
We've also looked at what our guide says about the real impact of visibility, the difference between symbolic and active allyship, and how these flags are part of building communities that are truly welcoming.
It's really clear from the guide, isn't it? These aren't just bits of fabric. They're packed with meaning, identity, resilience, visibility, the fight for equality.
Definitely. And understanding them, like we've tried to do in this analysis, feels like a concrete step towards understanding and supporting the actual people and communities they stand for.
And as our guide concludes, the way these flags keep evolving tells us something important. That identity, community, how we understand ourselves and each other, it's not static. It keeps developing.
It does make you think, As we see more flags, each highlighting a different facet of human experience, each asking for recognition, Does that challenge us, all of us, to keep learning, keep broadening our own understanding of diversity, and keep asking what genuine, full inclusion really requires?
It really should. It's like an ongoing invitation, isn't it? To learn more, engage more, and work towards a world where everyone feels not just tolerated, but seen, represented, and valued.
That feels like a good place to leave it, drawing on this analysis.
Thank you for joining us for this deep look into pride flags from the Urban Herald team. We hope exploring our guide together has offered some new perspectives on these powerful symbols.